today about the indigent burials that we are required to do by law. And so far, we had a budget of $7,500 for the year. We've already consumed $6,000, and each burial is $1,000. So we have $1,500 remaining, so the Service Safety Director is asking for an appropriation of another $9,500 to hopefully get us through the year. Last year, as an example, there were 6. 2021, there were 5. 2020, there were 3. But 2019, we had 12. 2017, we had 11. So the number can go up and down, but we can go a full 3 readings on this, but anything that we don't spend will just drop back into the general fund. So I think, did I get that straight up?
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't hard. I sent you an email about it, so you have, if you haven't seen your email today, all that information is included in there. Any questions for the Service Safety Director on this? Mr. McDaniel, I think you're my second. We'll go 3 readings on this. Okay, moving on. Next item I have is Resolution 9522. That's a resolution to appropriate $2,500 in the general fund. And this is from the clerk's office, I believe, clerk of courts, that indicates they're under budgeted by $17.28. So they're asking for an appropriation of $2,500 in the event that other unplanned overtime is needed. So I believe they are asking for suspension on this, and this is just a, close but not quite there from a budget perspective. Anything that's not spent, of course, will drop back into the carryover. So any questions on that? I didn't see Sherry here.
Mr. Stoughton.
Mrs. Kreitz, will you second that?
Yes, sir. Mr. Stoughton. Okay, Valita Sloan is back there. I don't know if you need.
Oh, is it Valita?
I don't know if you need.
Was it your court?
Behind me.
She's hiding behind the.
Oh! That's right. I said Sherry, didn't I? I didn't say.
That's all right.
That's been a while. Oh, my golly. Sorry, Valita.
Speech.
Well, for
My-
$17.28, I think it's worth the speech.
I'll tell you what, we'll give you 2,500 straight up.
Typically, there's $5,000 in that budget
Yeah.
annually, and just with the way the newer budget is done online, I just missed the overtime line item, and typically I have that $5,000 in there the last several years, so I'm just asking for $2,500 just in case there was a need for it later in the year. And I did have one person leave who had 1 hour of comp time, $17.28, and there was nothing in the line item. And I'm just asking for the $2,500 to carry through the rest of the year.
Yeah, and my apologies. You can see how long I've been here. All right. So,
Did you call me by the wrong name?
I did.
I did not catch that.
I
didn't
did.
catch it. Apology accepted.
my apologies. I've been here way too long. So, nevertheless, any questions for the clerk? I don't anticipate this to be a problem, and you are certainly welcome to leave.
Thank you.
Thanks for
so
coming.
much.
We appreciate having you. All right, so we'll ask for suspension on 9522. Thank you, Clerk Sandy, for pointing that out. My face is supposed to turn red, not yours. All right, moving on. Next item I have is Resolution 9622. This is a resolution to appropriate in the Municipal Court Judicial Drug Court Adam H. Fund 2039 in the amount of $130,000. I believe Judge Fields and company are here.
They never let me go anywhere without it.
You have a shock collar on?
It's that look I get.
Yeah.
That's right. We get IDAP funds from the state. This is a shift from our IDAP funds. It's technically money we've generated through OVIs, but we have to come to our funding association to transfer the money from the Adam board. I've done the order. Now I just got to transfer it into my other fund, and it's so we can meet our federal grant on our drug court, veterans court. We need $130,000. They gave me $750,000 for over 3 years, so 130, right? There you go. It's match money. I just got to do it. Then I brought some numbers just so you'd have them, because I don't come to see you that often. And when I do, I don't usually ask you for money. I'm just shifting money. In the Veterans Court right now, we only have 8 active people, but we have 11 graduates. We talked today in Veterans Court that with the veterans that out of those 11 graduates, none of them have reoffended that have graduated. We have terminated 6 people, and the nice thing out of that termination is we've only had 1 person reoffend. So I was very proud of the veterans and how they're doing, and they do really kind of feed off of each other. Some other numbers, right now we have in mental health court 17 people. We've had 52 graduates from mental health court. Drug court, we have 16 presently. We've had 127 graduates. It's been a longer program. Judge Turner had it before I did. And in our special abilities court, we presently have 2. We had anywhere between 18 and 20 people in our special abilities court. It's hard to tell how many we actually have because it's an open door policy even after they've graduated and their case is terminated. They're told they can come see me anytime on Wednesday morning, so they just kind of come whenever they want and we talk. So, but the 130,000 just to meet our grant.
That's great. Questions for the judge? Good information. Yes, Mrs.
I
Tina.
just want to ask a question. With your Veterans Court, are the ages, is it
Oh.
all over the place, or is it a certain
I got
age?
4 Vietnam vets, I've got a bunch of young guys, I've got them all over. And they actually interact really well. But yeah, we've got from probably 1973 to the present. And a lot of them are post-traumatic stress that was never diagnosed and alcohol, drug issues that were never addressed, so. But yeah, it's a nice court, and they do well. They feed off each other. I think the grouping of veterans is important, and I've talked to the jail about it too, because studies show when they're together, they have a respect for each other, and they don't want to get out of line because of that bond. So they do very well together, and they keep an eye on each other, so.
Any other questions? Seeing none, Judge, thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Do I stick around?
You do not.
All
Well,
right.
you do. Everyone else can.
Nobody ever wants me to stick around. Thank you.
No. Is there a preference on passage of, it said 1 or 2 readings?
I prefer one.
Okay.
I just need money to meet my grant,
Yep.
whatever you guys need to do.
All right, well, it's your money. It's money just being moved, right?
Right, just from one pot to another.
Okay, we will ask for suspension. Mr. McDaniel, will you second that, please?
Yes.
Excellent. All right, so suspension on 9622. Moving on, next item I have is Resolution 9722. That's a resolution to authorize the issuance of a then and now certificate to pay an invoice to Widen Services in the amount of $48.9250. This is coming through water pollution. Mr. James?
Yes, I don't see Superintendent Nixon. Is there either one of you, Denise, want to address this, or I can? I'll handle it. They had to do some training on the bucket truck, and they had to do it fairly quickly back in March. And unfortunately, a purchase order wasn't issued right away, and that's why we're asking for a then and now at this point.
Okay.
The training for this particular piece of equipment, this might look like a lot of money for that, but it's very important, not only from the standpoint of operating the equipment, but there's a whole lot of safety issues that go along with it. Anytime you're in a bucket truck and you're close to a 13,000 volt line, it can reach out and touch you in a way that you don't want to be touched. So what I'm saying is that training's very extensive, therefore, that's why I'm going to ask for suspension tonight.
Okay, any question for Mr. James on this? All right, we will ask for suspension on 9722, and the second is Mr. Matlin.
Mr. Matlin.
Very good. All right, suspension on 9722. Thank you, sir. Next item I have is Resolution 9822. That's a resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a contract for construction of the North Water Treatment Plant replacement project. This is coming through water pollution. Again, Mr. James.
Thank you, Chairman Stoughton. I would like to invite Mr. Stephen Wellstead to the podium for additional explanation. This is one of those things that we've anticipated it, and it's been a while in coming, but it's extremely important that we get this through. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman. Good evening, everybody. So yeah, as noted, I've been up here talking about this project for a while now, and we have gotten to the point where we're now advertising for the project with bids, public bids coming up shortly. And with that being said, we're introducing this legislation here to enter into a construction contract so we can construct the project. So yeah, as noted, we advertised late June, and as of now, our bid is scheduled to be opened on July 28th. With that being said, it looks like we're most likely going to push it back to August 3rd, and that will give us the ability, if contractors come back to us telling us there's any issues with the engineer's estimate, for example, or any other major problems we need to get fixed before bidding it, we can push it back another week to August 10th at the absolute latest. We can make that work and still stay on schedule with Ohio EPA as part of their program. And to be clear, so as of now, the engineer's estimate we've received is 68 million. So what I've done and what I typically do is I put it in the legislation up to 75 currently, to allow for the 10% over that is allowed per ORC, that we can award a bid if it's 110% of the engineer's estimate. Anything higher, we're forced to rebid unless there's an emergency or some other mitigating circumstance. So that's why the number right there is 75 currently. Again, hopefully if everything goes well, we'll have our bid numbers by August 3rd. And when August 8th comes around, which would be the second reading, we'll have concrete numbers for you. And if, deemed necessary, that could be, that 75 million could be adjusted if needed. I don't know if I have anything else to note as of now. I do want to thank everyone for working with me, getting this in last minute, as noted. We do need to have all of the information from the bids to Ohio EPA by August 15th to stay on schedule, and that includes the approved legislation here, which again, I couldn't submit with a number until we got that engineer's estimate just last week. So like I said, I'm appreciative working with me on that.
Yeah. Mr. Sheldon, I believe Ms. Cruz has about a 3-minute video she'd like to show relative to this project. We can do that now, or we can do it during the council meeting.
No, she reached out to me earlier, and
great.
I'm good with it.
Okay.
She's just looking for a remote right now.
Yep, we got it. Teresa's gonna push the button.
It's on, they say. Now we just gotta figure out which light switch to turn on.
I got it.
You pick the right one?
Eventually.
The Jeopardy song.
No, third time's a charm. There it is.
There we go, we're good.
All right. So,
That's
as
good.
part of this project, what we wanted to do, and let me back up and say, as part of this project, Miller Park is going to look like a war zone. Between building a new water plant on the north end of the park and running electric lines and water lines and putting new wells in, we're just gonna be all over the place. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to work with parks, come up with a plan for the park, and kind of reimagine what the park's gonna look like when we are all done as a park for the 21st century. We hired EMH&T to come in and work with us, and I just want to show you what we have come up with. Or not. No, switch this over. And hooked up.
Yeah, I think so.
Coordinating everything, is that the issue?
It's plugged in.
Oh, it is.
Mhm.
Oh, I see.
I'm not IT, I'm so sorry. To display, how press the. Sorry, guys. How new is your computer?
Yeah.
He likes to blow in his pants.
Now we're really in good shape.
The third light, did you turn that?
I thought those were decorative.
The third one closest to the audience.
There we go. While they're doing that, we'll just continue to plow through finance as to not have them be stressed out with everybody in the room looking at them. All right, so we'll move on to departmental updates, and then we'll go back to this video. So are there any departmental updates this evening? What a night not to have departmental updates.
We got it.
You got it?
Oh, they got it. All right.
We're gonna have a volume though?
That's the question.
There's no sound.
There's no
I
sound.
didn't come through either.
Where is it? Oh, you took it out of there.
Okay.
There you go.
I do not believe there's sound with this.
I'm guessing.
Correct.
Correct.
Well, that looks great.
You'll see a divided highway there on Memorial.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
Is your computer muted, or,
There's no sound.
oh, there's no sound? Oh,
That's a possible bridge we'd like to see connect to General Sherman.
well, can we go back to the beginning then, and someone kind of narrate what we're looking at here for sure? I mean,
Okay, well, it's probably easier when we get to the overhead at the very end.
Dog park stays intact.
Yeah.
The parking lot to the pool becomes a skate park. That's without the current water department there. Again, the new skate park where the current parking lot to Miller Pool is. Little theater area looking towards Memorial Drive. Those were pickleball courts, not necessarily, but none of this is all conceptual right now. There's much to
Right.
do to see it get to that point.
No? Yeah, would you please?
I can try, I think I can get it.
I think you wanted to pause it right there.
There you go. That
Okay.
yeah.
So, yes, this is the overhead. So you see on the right-hand side, the new water plant. And between the water plant and the river will be the stormwater area for the water plant. It's an underground tank system, and above that will be meadow. Between the water plant then and the parking lot, there's some wetlands. That's the area that I could never drain, which is the whole reason that they were moving the ball fields out of Miller Park to start with. And so that will be a naturalized area. Directly south of that, in the loop, you see an amphitheater stage, the swimming pool, and as Paul said, the relocated skate park. Parks had already planned on relocating that skate park, so it's really nothing new. North of the pool is a splash pad that Parks had already planned on installing. We've relocated the parking area, added a connector bridge over to General Sherman. As Paul said, the dog park will remain. The water maintenance department will remain for the time being. We hope to relocate that at some point. And the existing water plant will come down. at some point after the new water plant comes on, because we don't want to have a building to continue to have to maintain. This provides connectivity into the park from Memorial Drive, along with a kind of overlook area along Memorial Drive, something that's more pedestrian-friendly, the tree-lined boulevard, and the little tiny square buildings that you see, there's 5 of them. We're putting 4 wells in. The 5th one in the dog park is a future well. Those, in cooperation with Parks, will be brick structures with room for artwork. So Parks will be having the schools do artwork to go into those buildings.
We've got just a, I don't know if you can see the cursor there, we've got one located at the south end, right there. One, which would be a future well if needed, where the dog parks are. There's another well here, just north of the proposed parking lot. Another one here, just south of the proposed plant, and then another one here near where the underground stormwater detention is going to be.
So this is just a vision. Will it actually look like this? Maybe, maybe not. But what it does is it defines areas, natural areas, active recreation areas, the water plant, division water areas. It allowed us to establish the sanitary radius around the wells that we were required to do, and really kind of lets us reimagine the park for the 21st century. We will be working with Parks to look for funding for some of this. Some of it will like I said, was already planned by Parks, so funds are included in their levy funds. So you'll see bits and pieces of this starting to occur in the next 2 years as we finish the water project.
Can I ask a couple quick questions? First of all, on Memorial Drive, will you have to widen it in order to accommodate the boulevard?
The intention is no. The boulevard will take the place of the turn lanes because a number of those streets are blocked off anyways. Again, this is the landscape architect, not the
Right.
traffic engineer
Understand,
looking
sure.
at it. So will the boulevard extend that far down? Probably not, because we don't want to lose the turn lane onto 6th.
Right.
Or onto Wheeling. But the general idea is to get some trees and make this the northern gateway into the downtown.
The second question I would have is, I know that you have to raise the level where the new plant will be, roughly 9 to 12 feet,
Correct.
okay? How far will that extend? Will that extend all the way over to the bike path?
No.
Okay,
It will extend basically to the large square, let's see if I can put a cursor here, to this building.
okay,
This is our clear well. The clear well is actually built into the side of the hill.
got it.
And then on the south side, these buildings kind of mark the top of the hill.
And you're still looking at about 40,000 cubic yards in order to bring that up to the level you need?
Yeah, that's what.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Numbers keep
And
changing.
we have, I think we have 20 to 25,000 cubic yards currently at the Upper Hocking,
right.
coming from,
From the park, Bower Park?
yes, from
Yes.
that, and then, where else does that come from, Denise?
The Upper Hocking.
The Upper Hocking, yes.
Yeah, right, okay.
So we just wanted to share with you what we see coming down the road and alert you to the fact that it's not going to look this nice for the next 2 years as we get this project built.
Well, you made the speedway go away, that was good. People drive like maniacs pulling it out of there.
All right?
Any questions for Denise or Stephen? We appreciate you
Well done.
sharing that with us.
Well done.
Any questions? All right, well, very good, thank you very much for that. That would be nice if it ended up looking like that. I suspect it'll be some form of some of that, which is good. Exciting when you get to see change. All right, so with the legislation, Mr. James, I think you're at 2 readings on this one.
That is correct, and I'll ask Ms. Teener to second that.
Okay, so 9822, 2 readings with Ms. Teener as the second. Very good. Thank you all for that. All right, there are I'll go departmental updates again if anyone wants to now jump in here. All right, there are no departmental updates for this evening. So we will move on to meeting prep to President Uhl for tonight's plan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stoughton. We do have a couple of ordinances to work through. Temporary Ordinance 21-22 is an ordinance to address parking as a part of LCO. This coming through law. Ms. Kreitz?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, this ordinance actually replaces some of the sections in the traffic and parking code to allow the service safety director to prohibit parking in locations when projects such as street paving are underway, and to permit enforcement in a manner similar to how it is handled for snow removal and street cleaning. The change also includes a change to, that was redundant. It also includes a change to the language in section 351.15 toward the impoundment of vehicles to make it permissible rather than mandatory.
Very good, thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Kreitz on Temporary Ordinance 21-22? If not, what's your pleasure tonight, Mrs. Kreitz?
I believe we're going to go 2 readings.
And who's your second?
Mr. Schoonover.
So 2 readings on Temporary Ordinance 21-22 with Mr. Schoonover as the second. Temporary Ordinance 22-22 is to grant an easement for a fiber optic telecommunications system. This coming through Public Works. Mr. Schoonover.
Yeah, this is a part of our continued economic development projects out there on Wilson Road. So we're granting, it's already city property, just granting an easement to the telecommunications company, and then they're installing their stuff, and then we're also getting the added benefit of having our own connections in there for future use as well. So it's on a economic development timeline. We know how quickly those move, so we are going to be asking for suspension this evening.
Very good. Suspension then on 22-22. Who is your second?
I will be.
Mr. James.
Mr. James. Okay. So we will suspend on 22-22. Temporary Ordinance 23-22 is an ordinance to rezone property at 544 and 550 South Broad Street, coming through code enforcement. Mr. Ayers.
Yeah, we're looking to rezone the land there from industrial heavy to commercial general for the purpose of building a Dollar General in the future. City planning passed it recently with some, not really restraints, but conditions, yes, thank you, Tom, that certain sidewalks are built to certain lengths, and there's a right-of-way dedication. We're asking for 2 readings and a public hearing on August 8th at 6:30.
Okay. And who's your second?
Ms. Sitterly.
Anyone have questions or comments about this particular piece of legislation? If not, then we will have first reading tonight and a public hearing on August 8th at our regular 6:30 council meeting. All right, with that, I will turn it back to the chairman.
Very good, thank you, Mr. President. All right, so the final thing I have on tonight's agenda is really just to go back and discuss temporary resolution 9022. I was not here last meeting. Let me find it here. So I sent you all a note indicating my concerns. I think Mr. Matlin did as well. I wanted to open the floor up to see what the rest of council thought before I offer, more thoughts on this. And maybe I can start with Paul. Maybe you guys had a discussion last time and I hadn't seen it. So if you want to go first, or you want to respond, or?
So, I had met with President Uhl this morning, and I have an architect here, Vice President Melinda Shaw, S-H-A-H. We had talked about doing a 5-minute presentation during city council where she could talk and give a little bit about the progress going forward. If you would rather move that up to this time, that would be fine with me, or if we'd like to save it for general city council, that's okay too. Where I could bring her in that conversation. There seems like last time there was a little discussion about the steps, and what I had asked her to talk about was, and the very small graph that you have before you, which I admit is very tiny, kind of gives you a little bit of, there seemed to be a lot of discussion about what are the timeframes as we go forward. I will say this, if we were approved today to engage in a contract with Schooley Caldwell, we're probably looking to no more than 3 years, most likely, to finish this project. So it is in steps. This entire project, we would be back before you for other resolutions and legislation, ultimately to get permissions to fund the project through however we're going to fund it. But as we engage with a construction manager at risk, that'd be another opportunity to come before you to figure out what the cost of the whole project is. I wish I could tell you exactly it's going to be this much. What we're proposing here is $4 million, but we need to do an investigation into this, see the current conditions. But that's where we're at. I would love for this to be approved tonight. Personally, I will tell you this, I can't imagine us not being in City Hall. You drive down this Main Street and you see at the top of the hill, you see the county commissioners investing quite a bit into that facility up there. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of our courts across the street here, down the street to the west of here, and the vibrancy of our downtown. You look at our building at City Hall, they expect City Hall and government to be there. I think I can speak for everybody that's in that building. We're proud to be in that building. There's not a desire to vacate that building. That's me and others that I've talked to. You're welcome to talk to anybody there. I think it's a worthwhile building to keep residency in as a city government. I think our citizens would ask of us to do that. I think it's a solid, structurally great building. But yes, it's way overdue for some improvements. And that's why we would like to start this process. And that was some of the things that we went to the taxpayers about in our recent income tax levy, is that we would invest not only in higher police and fire, but to look to improve this building. There's no question what absolutely has to be done is the outside of the building to weatherize this, to deal with the infiltration of water. That means tuck pointing, that means roof issues, and evaluating this building. And this resolution before you tonight would allow Schooley Caldwell, which we're very impressed with this company. We would like to get started on it sooner than later. And that's my introductory remarks.
All right, well, then I'll dive in. You know, I'm not arguing that the work doesn't need to happen. Right from the get-go, my concern is there is no Plan B, right? The Plan A is to continue using that building as a city hall, which it served a pretty good purpose for 125 years. You know, nothing, not to say that it, can't continue to be a city building, but again, it's not built for, it's not built for 2020, technology. It's built for 1897, and it hasn't, it certainly has, the upkeep hasn't been maintained. The other problem I have is any project that we, let's take the Columbian, that was a, I would say $8 million project that had a, almost a $2 million overrun. We know we're going to find some things in there. No one's suggesting that we don't go forward with figuring out what's wrong with that building. I think we absolutely go forward and do that. I would love to go forward and do that. I only want to authorize the contract just to basically go through and find out, hey, what are the things that they found structurally, with that building that need to be addressed. And I'd like to know how much it costs, and ultimately, if they want to do modeling and things of that nature, I'm all for that. But what I kind of have a problem with is, this is, you're talking 3 years' time. There's going to be a new administration in just a year and a half. I think that, perhaps they should get an opportunity, whoever that might be, to have an opportunity to determine what the next step is, because the City Hall is not the only thing in the city that needs addressed from a capital perspective, if you think about the bigger picture, right? And I've said, and I believe, that our electorate is willing to fund a much, much bigger capital project to set the city up for the next 50 years. and they've proven time and again. They've passed operating levies for the city schools, they've passed bond issues for the city schools, and, believe it or not, we've gotten through the elementary schools, they had enough left over to do the junior highs, and then they went out and they got money for the high school. The city schools are pretty well set, and they even actually have an income tax as well. Here in the city, they have supported us with not only our .45 increase, but also the parks. They supported the parks in a big way, and even the electorate in the city supported the county parks. I think the electorate would support one more big bond issue that basically fix some other problems that we have. We have a police station that, starting to show its age, right? It was at 40, 50 years old. We know we're going to be putting $400,000-ish of cash into that place. You have the annex over there that, it's working just fine, but optimally, you like to have everybody in City Hall in the same place, and I'm not suggesting that I know where that might be. But you have fire stations that also, all three of them, clearly, first of all, we probably need to move one. We can argue that we can take the fire station on top of the hill and keep it operational. I think it should be a museum. That's my personal opinion. And then the fire station out east certainly obviously needs a good upgrade. It's, it's starting to show its time. And then, as I've said before, and to anyone that wants to listen around this table, we have Edie Road that needs to be widened. It's not wide enough. It's not functional for what the city of Lancaster is going to look like in 25 years. So whether it's pools, whether it's parks, whether it's buildings, whether it's, again, another paving, another bite at the paving apple. If you included that all in a bigger bond issue, I believe the citizens would support that, because I think as an administration, city schools, I think we all have proven to them time and again that we're good stewards of their money. And I think they would go to that last bite of the apple that would kind of set up the city of Lancaster with all that municipal infrastructure that we so dearly need. We put $4 million into this building, we still have all those other problems. I think that, we need to think bigger picture. Now, if you're telling me that you believe in your heart of hearts that $4 million is going to get that building from where it is currently now and into the building of, the future that's going to sustain us, I just don't know that that's going to be the case. I've been through, I've been going through that building for 18 years, and, it's rickety and leaky, and, you see all sorts of problems with it. So I'm missing the bigger picture. And secondly, I think, you folks on the record is not running again. I think the next mayor should get an opportunity to have a say in this as well, and I think the citizens should have an opportunity to have a say in this as well. That's my opinion. It's basically kind of what I put in in my note back to you folks prior to the 27th meeting. I'm all for set somebody in there, find out what's wrong, tell me how much it's going to be, and if it's $4 million, then to fix it all up, then maybe we do think about going your way. But if it's not, all right, there is no plan B, right? It's only to fix the $4 million plus the overruns, and then we're going to have to put more money into that particular building. Those are my concerns from supporting this resolution as it sits today. That's my concern. I have no problem doing it. I'm not suggesting that that building get torn down, anything like that. I know the historical nature of that building. We got to be prudent. We're going to spend $400,000 on something that says, submit construction, or you basically, approve bidding and award contracts. I'm not comfortable with that being as a part of this particular resolution. I'm fine right up to the point where they do all their due diligence, they tell us exactly how much it is, and then what our next steps are. I'm fine with that, but not in its current state. So I welcome other comments from the floor. Mrs. Craig.
I agree with you largely. I absolutely understand and recognize the need to do the work to the City Hall. I think it's a wonderful building, and it's something that we should preserve. Especially in this economic climate that we have right now, with inflation where it is, with costs of repairs and contractors, without having a clear understanding of what needs to be fixed and what all of those costs will be, I can't in good conscience vote for something that has so much ambiguity. and vagueness as far as what needs to happen and where we need to go to get forward. Absolutely support getting that done as far as the assessment portion.
Others? Mr. McDaniel?
So at the last meeting, I asked the service director about separating this out into a piece that would essentially get us to where we might go. More of a, what's wrong with the building, how much it may cost. And the desire at that time, if I'm correct, was that you didn't feel it was something that should be separated, and you didn't feel even it was necessarily possible to separate it out like that. Is that pretty much?
I'm not saying it's not possible, but, so when I go back to what you said before, why wouldn't we do this project if we find that whatever we find, I think this project should go forward, even at your plan of a grander levy that we take back to the citizens to approve more money. We still need this project to go forward. Why would we not take it forward right now? Because we're positioned well where I think we can do that. And so, you know, I just tell you, this building, we cannot delay it. I understand the climate that you're saying we're in. I said from the very beginning, it will obviously most likely probably cost more than $4 million. We're not in a place where I can tell you, is it 6 million? Is it 8 million? Is it 50 million? I don't know. Whatever you do, I understand. I don't have a plan B, I have a plan A. It's called Fix City Hall. And it's something I would encourage for us to stay in there as administration and the utilities office, because I see a great future there for that building. So why wouldn't we just do it right now? Now, that being said, there will be proposals given to us from Schooley Caldwell to say, well, here is an option A, B, C, or D, whatever. Here's what we could do for this much or this much. And we might eliminate and not do everything that I would love to see done, but I'm realistic here. You might not have that funding because we're gonna have to finance whatever we do, even in the grander project, the plan B of what else we need to do in the city. I think we'd make a mistake delaying this project and just move and forge forward. I would keep you updated. Yes, I did mention last time, I think there ought to be a little trust with the administration here, that if we find out, I would like to get this architect engaged and get these engineers on site and develop those plans, and we can keep you updated. But I don't know why we would not want to do this. I understand, why couldn't we just do this one, and then plan B is to take that bigger plan that you have, which I think is admirable. I'm not opposed to any of those things. I think that'd be fantastic to do that. But I'm talking about our current funds that we have right now with what we just went to the taxpayer about 2 years ago and got approval. To sit there and delay this project even further, I don't want to delay it any longer. And so I say, okay, if you want to separate this out and we have third reading, I'm bringing you in an option. I'm not saying that we can't do that, but it's another delay where I have to come to council and bring that. Yes, you have the right to do that, and yes, I would have to do that. But I ask you, from my personal perspective, I'd like the authorization of this tonight to move this forward, to get this building done, and we will keep you informed.
Mr. Schoonover?
You breathing heavy?
too close to it.
You were breathing heavy, it wasn't me. Okay.
It wasn't you this time.
Okay. It's a hot button subject. You're passionate about it, right? Back to, I think Becky asked about it last time, back to Don's question, and ultimately, Tom's, I don't think, I'd like to see it rehab myself. Just as far as what you gave us this evening, and as far as breaking it out, you're saying if we break it out, it's just gonna delay certain steps of it, but do we need to spend $400,000 to find out what's wrong with it, get a design, and then what it costs? So if the answer to that question is no, we don't, that's why you break it down into a smaller piece. And I think just from this group in our short time together, or sometimes our long time together, we've clearly been open to suspending on pieces of legislation that we have all the information and it makes sense. So you know, being concerned that breaking it down and then you have a second piece that comes in and you have to go 3 readings, I don't think it would even go to that type of delay, but the $400,000 hasn't really been broken down to, like, so, as an example, is it just one package deal and you don't have it broken down to where, like, what's the, on your graph, what's the green part cost? You know what I mean? What's the green and the first blue section cost? All the way down to design development, but then again, so what this looks like and then what we have to, I guess, be able to explain to our constituents is, you know, we're pretty well rubber stamping the fact that we're gonna make this happen regardless how much it costs. So I thought that it kind of made sense to maybe have these broken down into, not even necessarily if it's not different pieces, but at least, I guess, a better breakdown of the $400,000, up to $400,000 that you're asking for.
So let me give you an example. We're gonna have to come before you for a construction manager at risk resolution. That will be sooner than you think. There's another opportunity, if you wanna stall the project, you can do it right then as well. I'm not saying I'll do whatever you wish, but we're gonna methodically go forward on this, break that out, and I ask, what information am I gonna bring before you to say, don't do this project? Because that's what you're asking. What am I gonna tell you on whatever report we bring and say, let it crumble?
Can I answer that question? So if
Be
the
my guest.
green part, if you come back with site investigation and then down to, which part would be this, these are our suggestions to where you can decide what you want to do and what you don't want to do based on the cost of said item? Does that, does that make sense what I just said?
It does. and-
Mr. Schoonover, if I could, I would just say, if you took bullet point 1 and bullet point 2, what's it cost to get to that, pretty much to, pretty much get through those 2 bullet points. 3 and 4, as a part of this legislation, don't need to be there. And a couple things. We're not trying to stall the project. You're taking this personally, and you should not be. What we're doing is, this is a big expenditure of money of $400,000 now, but it's also committing to another big expenditure of money in the future. What we're simply, at least what I'm saying is, I'd like you to do bullet point 1 and bullet point 2, tell me how much that's going to be, right? And then when we get to that point, then we'll have, schematic design development, we'll have, be in a position to kind of move forward. So it doesn't mean that it couldn't, we couldn't pick up and go from there. All right? I mean, we've waited for a very, very long time to deal with City Hall. Another 3 weeks, or if you want to have a special meeting, modify the legislation and have a special meeting, I'm happy to come back here and do that, but we're not stalling, we're not trying to stall this. There's a couple things here, and I mentioned it earlier. You made the comment about the great future, right? Well, your great future is about, what, 535 more days, I think you have down to the days. There's going to be someone else that's going to be elected to be the city, the mayor of the city that's going to provide direction. And perhaps that person's way younger than, any of us sitting around this table, right? That may have a completely different vision. There may be new folks sitting around this council table that have different opinions about how we want to spend and develop our city to the next 40 to 50 years. So it's not, I think it's great that we're going to get the analysis, the complete analysis of what needs to be fixed. Because that gives us, okay, we know what that stake in the ground is, based on all the, work that they're going to do to confirm that. Then we have choices. We don't have to say we have to kind of commit to doing the whole project. We can commit to doing bullet 1 and bullet 2, bring it back to us, and we will determine whether we move forward with bullets 3 and 4. That's all. No one's suggesting we stall it. I haven't heard that from anybody. I didn't hear it from Corey, didn't hear it from Don, didn't hear it from Becky, didn't hear it from Christina, didn't hear it from me. We applaud you for going forward because we agree with you. It does need to be repaired. Mayor Scheffler.
So I have several observations. First of all, your belief in the willingness of the constituents to approve some huge bond levy, 25 million, 30 million, to do a number of projects. You cite that the voters supported us, and yes, they did, but it took multiple attempts and a lot of money spent to get there. And in the end, we had to dedicate the proceeds of what passed to safety forces, which we had no problem doing and was more or less our intention anyway. So I'm not as convinced as you are that the residents, constituents are willing to spend the money. Secondly, you mentioned that the building was built as an 1800s building and it's not made for the 21st century. Well, I think on top of the hill, there's a fine example of that being done. I believe the county courthouse is older than City Hall, and the commissioners have done a wonderful job of upgrading that building to the 21st century, and I don't know if you've been up there lately, but it's worth a trip up there to visit. And thirdly, I'm not an engineer, but I've been around as mayor long enough to know that doing the green part isn't going to tell you how much it's going to cost. Because I know from all these contracts, you have to go down the road with design, construction documents to go out to bid before you're going to get an engineer's estimate, as Mr. Wellstead demonstrated tonight, that we couldn't go out to bid until we had an engineer's estimate. And that is pretty far down the road on this graph to figure out what we have to do, how we do it, how much it's going to cost. And just the green part isn't going to get there. All it's going to do is say, we need tuck pointed, we need a new roof, we probably need new windows, the clock tower needs fixed, and we already know that. We have to get further down the line to figure out what it's going to cost and to get an estimate to do those things. So there will be multiple steps along the way, and I've heard the comment a couple times that this is committing us to spend a lot of money to do something. It's not committing us to anything but to do a study and come up with an answer and to design what that answer is going to be. You're going to be asked to approve a construction manager at risk. You're going to be asked to approve some kind of financing. You're going to be asked to approve going out for bid with the contractor. And some of those things aren't going to happen for 6, 8 months, I don't know, maybe a year down the road. So there is plenty of time to evaluate what the situation is, figure out what needs to be done, what we're willing to do, and then find out how much it's cost.
Mr. Ehlers.
So if we do approve the $400,000 tonight, if we get to the point where we see the design and we see what they're going to tell us the price is, and we don't want to move forward, is that $400,000 broken down to where we would only spend so much of that up to that point, and then that we would get, say, 100,000 of it back if we don't move forward into construction, or would we spend the full 400 no matter how far into it we get?
I'm not an attorney, but I believe that there are stages in this contract to go along, and, you know, a certain part of it is 20% of the contract, another portion is 10%, another portion is 15%. And I assume, and again, maybe the law director can address this, at any point, we can say, uncle, we can't go any further. And, I mean, is that accurate?
That's accurate. I have not had the ability to see a copy of a contract or anything yet, but that's because our attorney, Mark Evans at Bricker, has been dealing with this situation since it is specific to a building that is so historical. But that's accurate. Yeah, we can stop. And like the mayor said, you don't have to approve going out to bid for any of the repairs.
No.
I mean, so this, it does come in chunks, and for some reason, I think we're seeing this as all, we're committing to all of this right now, immediately, and that's it. And that's not accurate.
Well,
I think it would be valuable if I had Melinda come up here and help with some of those questions. And she's back there. Would you entertain her to come up here at this time?
Not quite yet, just, but
Okay.
yeah, I'm okay with, well,
I mean-
I'm gonna check with, I gotta check with the
Okay.
president
All
council,
right.
hang on. So, Law Director Hall, so you haven't seen the contract, so first and foremost, why, we don't even have a contract in hand. Why would we, what's the rush to approve the resolution?
I've read one, somebody
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah, but
Friday.
it's got a lot of blanks in it.
It doesn't.
Oh, yeah.
But it has a section in it about canceling. It says that we can cancel with 7 days written notice for no reason at all.
We
Well-
always
Concerned
include
about
that
canceling
language.
it, but that's-
But we don't have a contract in hand, and we're going to suggest, right? You don't
So,
have,
there are still terms that need to be negotiated.
Sure.
And like I said, I'm not negotiating those terms, so I can't tell you exactly what they are. But I know that both sides are working towards finalizing an agreement because, you know, we expected this to move forward.
well, then I would be in a better position to understand that if we truly wanted to call no joy at some point in time, that we, in fact, we knew what the out was.
There's always an out.
I understand
and
that,
I'm
but
sure it's
some,
in the contract.
sometimes it costs money and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, well, I mean, apparently Councilman Matlin
Well,
has reviewed the contract at length and.
You're the law director, I'm not gonna,
I'm not a lawyer.
No.
But I read in what was emailed to the city council, because Ms. Keener asked for it, said that we'd have to pay what had been done up to that point. But we could, with writing 7 days' notice, and it was like one sentence, and said that we don't have to have a reason.
But,
Just say we cancel the contract and have a nice day.
Which is, like I said, standard in all of our contracts.
okay, well, that's fine, but it's not the contract, I mean, again, this is a big chunk of money, committing us to a big chunk today, potentially committing us to a big chunk in the future. I think we ought to know. You know, are we doing the water plant without a contract?
Oh, we're doing the water plant with a contract, it's 1,000 pages if you'd like to see it.
No, it's
You're
not my,
welcome
it's
to
not
see
my
it.
point. My point is, people are upset that we're concerned about, you know, what the future holds, and, you know, I think you even say, trust us, we'll bring you more information. Well, that's why there's a separation between the, you know, the administrative branch and the legislative branch. That's why. So it's well within our right to ask these questions. You know, I don't much care for the fact that, you know, we're asking questions, want answers, and are concerned about a big spend, especially given the current economic conditions that exist. You know, it's interesting, you know, I don't want to get anecdotal here, but
Okay. I don't understand, I mean, I told you that it's a standard clause in all of our contracts that we have an out. Because obviously, you as the legislative authority have the right to decide whether or not you are going to fund things, correct?
Yep.
Okay, and so that's the process that we've always followed. You know, we go through this a chunk at a time, and that's what this does as well, a chunk at a time. They have to get approval to go out to bid.
Mhm.
So we're not committing ourselves to spending $4 million upfront.
Understand
They
that.
have to come back to you and ask you for your approval to go out to bid.
And what people was just simply asked is to take this contract, and if you just took the bullets that Paul provided, it wasn't the bullets that, you know, we made up, that if we did phase one or bullet one and bullet two, what would the cost be? That's all we're asking.
I don't know that we can say exactly what the cost is going to be in advance of knowing what the issues are. As you mentioned, it's an old building, and they're going to dig into it, and they're going to find issues that we don't know exist right now. There are some pretty open and obvious things that need to be taken care of, but I don't think we can say immediately, right now, we know exactly how the money's gonna be allocated.
Okay, well, then maybe this is poor language to put in bullet three, which is approvals, bidding, and award, all right? If I'm sitting here as a person that's going to, and I understand that you can't, obviously, the money needs to be appropriated, but, you know, if we have a construction manager or a manager at risk issuing, you know, contracts on our behalf on something that's unfunded, potentially, right? I mean, this whole bullet, 1 through 4, pretty much covers start to finish. All right, this is what Paul sent us as council. All right, and oh, by the way, this is the only conversation we had with the administration about this project when it was dropped on us 3 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, I guess. All right, so,
I don't believe that has anything to do with me. I'm
no,
sorry.
no, but we're just, you asked, we're allowed to be concerned about how the city money is being spent, and we're also concerned, or allowed to ask, that, and we're asking, if you did bullet 1 and bullet 2, what would the cost be? We're not asking you to be, $217,481. You can go back to the firm that you're using, and they can tell you what that cost is. I would feel better knowing what that cost is, and the fact that before we ever get to the bidding phase of, bullet 3 and bullet 4, then, we know that, we are controlled from the legislative side of the expenditure.
So we don't normally do that in any project we've ever had. We're conducting and moving forward with you as we do with many other projects in water pollution, and other things. We're asking you to fund this, yes, but to get into the management of this, that's typically not what I've had city council help us with. I'm asking you to please fund this. And again, I ask, what would you hear to say, stop the project, don't do anything on this building? What would you hear? And I understand you're saying that's not your point. If you want us as a council to say, stop and not make it 400,000, make it 200,000, if that's what you want to do, and still authorize me to enter into contract and adjust it down to 200,000, I will get our attorney, Ricker Eckler's, this attorney, Mike Evans, is amazing. He has been incredible for us and saved us in so much other large projects. I'm telling you, his value is amazing. This is a very smart contract. This is nothing different than we've ever done. We're doing $150 million stuff right now. I've never seen this council ever do that in any of those projects.
It's because
What is different here?
you have a building that's 125 years old that's been neglected. That's my concern, okay? And, I don't imagine they're gonna go in there and say, well, this building is not salvageable, or, you can't fix it. But the question is, it could become could become, an $8 million. We don't know that. So the question is, what is your plan to fund it? Because that's the next thing that's gonna be put in front of us is, okay, we think it's $5 million, let's plan for 10-15% overrun. I don't know what you do on an old building like that. Probably, what was it, Columbium was almost 20% over. Maybe you have planned a 20% overage. So then what do? How do we go and pay for that particular, project? And it seems that we want to use cash and, use operating money to pay for these things. At least that's what I've heard in the past. And I think it's a bigger project in that. And Mayor, by the way, you and I may disagree that the community would support us. I think they would. That's just my opinion versus yours. Yes, Mrs. Tiner.
You've been on, you said 18 years, because you've been on about the same time as I've been. Ever since I've been on, all you do is hear, well, we've heard much history about what's wrong with the building. So why don't, and we have engineers, we have a building department. I know when people go do historic buildings here in town, they go and look at things and see what the project is and that. Why don't we, with things like the elevator, electric, whatever else, why don't we go out for bid and see what people say there without I don't know why we don't do, that's what these people are gonna do. Why don't we go out and see what things are gonna cost, like to fix the elevator and things like that? We have a historic commission here. We have another committee that does things. We had a man that wanted to fix our clock, I remember, came to council, if I recall. That wanted to, why aren't we trying this first, seriously? And just seeing what it would cost that way, just going out for bid like we do everything else. You say we don't fund everything out, we fund everything else, well, why don't we try this? Because we know what needs fixed.
The other thing I would say, so when we go and build a water plant, when we build a water pollution plant, you have constant committee meetings and interactions with your council representatives. We got no heads up other than when this became in legislative form. Maybe that's part of what I'm upset about. Yes, Mr. James.
I'll try and be as discreet as I can with this. We need to, just looking at this timeline from an engineering standpoint, I'm not a civil engineer, but you almost have to get clear down to the point before you get to construction management and closeout to get an idea of exactly what this building needs to have done, regardless of what bullet points he's shown in the email. you can't really make a good determination. Now, I know you think that going back to the voters again is okay. Well, I remember when we first started the discussion about the income tax, you sincerely thought that it would be passed on the first one, and it did not. And right now, we've gone to the well a whole lot of times with the schools. We've also all gotten, any landowners here have gotten auditors, the county auditor has given you heads up that you may be paying more on your property tax. I think that people are pretty much tapped out. And to go back to them with a huge bond issue to replace all the buildings, the annex, the city building, the police department, I don't think it'll be supported. You know, that's my opinion. But from some of the discussions I've had, people are tapped out.
Very good, so that must have been addressed to me, but that's your opinion versus my opinion.
Yeah.
So that's, again, there are different ways to go chase that. Other comments? Yes, Mr. Schoonover.
I guess I just want to clarify my thoughts. You know, I use the green color as an example, and, you know, I guess maybe my confusion or misunderstanding or whatever the case may be is, I guess I was shocked by the $400,000 number to get us to the point to find out what it would cost. Because like we've all said, we know plenty of things that are wrong with the building. So I guess I was shocked by the $400,000 number to get us that, you know, your $4 million number or $6 million or whatever the case may be. So, you know, that's why I thought maybe it would be easier to swallow if it was, I guess, broken down a little more, and maybe they can shed some light on that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, this step costs this much, this step costs that. Because I feel like, I know what you're saying and you're frustrated by it, and I feel like a lot of the legislation that we look at, whether it's a street department project or, you know, a grant project, grant specifically, because I write them myself, is I have to have the budget broken down. I can't, if I ask for $30,000, like, I have to be pretty specific down to the, well, it's gonna cost, I'm buying $2,000 worth of traps to trap cats. You know what I mean? So I guess I was kind of expecting the $400,000 to be broken down a little bit for us. That was my point. If that makes sense.
Mr. Mallett.
We've had a good discussion. I want to remind you, the resolution 9022 does basically three things. It authorizes the service director to enter into contract with the Caldwell, I'm sorry, I don't have the name, Schooley Caldwell. It moves some money, the auditor moves some money, and it moves some more money. It's not authorizing anything beyond the contract with Schooley Caldwell. And my next point is, if anything you want to do, anything you want to build requires a good foundation. And the more work gets done up front on this building, where they do investigation, they dig into what's going on with it. If we just had somebody fix the electric, but then the electric co-mingles with the other systems in the building, maybe that would not work out right. Same with the elevator, as an example. So I feel that this is it's a bunch of money, and it's a bunch of money, it's a hard pill to swallow because it's general fund money. And that money can go directly to everybody else. And when we do all these water pollution, there's grant money there, there's loan money that we're already talking about. And they've already figured out how to borrow the money before they come to see us. But I think the more work we do up front to get this project started, the more information we're gonna have, the less chance we're gonna have of getting bad information, like the overrun on the municipal court building. Because I don't believe any of this was done on that building. It was just, we entered into a contract, we started redoing our old building and ran into all kinds of problems. So that's why, yeah, it's a lot of money, but that's why we need to do this and get it to where we can get started doing the investigation so we can see how big a project is. And the last thing about the contract, we're looking at legislation tonight to spend $75 million on water pollution, and we're gonna let the service director enter into a contract that none of us are ever gonna see, and it's gonna be 1,000 pages long. So we've trusted him to do all these things, and I personally trust him to do this. Thank you.
Part of my point, Jack, was the fact that the first time we saw this was,
Oh, I get it.
right here on council.
Yeah.
That contract for a $75 million water plant has been vetted through, through committee. And all those things come through committee, and no different with water pollution. So, I have a quick ask here. Is section 3 correct, where it has that 78,000 number? It just seems like an odd number. I asked that before I went on vacation, and
That's been fixed.
Yeah, you don't have the most up-to-date.
Oh, yeah, you don't have the most updated, I'm sorry.
okay, what should that be, 400?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. I don't need it.
Got it?
Yeah, I got it. I just wanted to,
I'm reading it on the website, and it's not updated there either.
It's not?
No.
okay. Yeah, Mayor Scheffler.
Gee, I have a lot of observations here. First of all, you keep mentioning that we've only known about this for 2 weeks. I've been mayor 2 months. I've been mayor for 4.5 years. We have been talking about doing this to City Hall for 4.5 years, and probably sometime before that. We have discussed it in many meetings. We have discussed it might cost $4-6 million. So the fact that this is a surprise is a surprise to me. Secondly, there seems to be the conception that we're going to spend $400,000 to find out what's wrong with this building. That $400,000 contract goes all the way through construction, if I'm not mistaken. It's construction, evaluation, et cetera, which I think if you total up all these, we're talking 3 years. That $400,000 is for all the work that School D. Caldwell is going to do for that period of time, for 3 years or so, not just to figure out what's wrong with the building. And then Ms. Teener mentioned about going out and looking at the elevator, looking at the electrical, and that we have engineers. The engineers that we have on staff are civil engineers. They do roads, they do bridges, they do that kind of stuff. And they do this kind of work internally. So before we go out to bid on any project for streets, et cetera, all this work is done in the background by their salaries that we're paying School D. Caldwell for. Months and months and months of work goes forward. I'm guessing that Kurt Schonk, our assistant city engineer, is already working on plans for next year's street paving project. And for all the other projects that we've got going this year, and our in-house engineers do that, where this contract is going to take us a long time. So we don't have the internal expertise to draw plans and specifications for a new elevator, for a new electrical system, for even new windows in the building if that's necessary. So,
A couple questions. First of all, this never came through any committee. We didn't talk about.
you're right.
We did not talk about this in here. Okay, that was my point. All right, and secondly, when is the expenditure of cash expected to be?
It is throughout the whole project.
Okay, I'm
It's
just
not like
asking.
we're gonna write a check $400,000.
I understand that. I'm just asking, what do you think you'll spend in 2022, 2023, your best guess? I'm not asking you to, be precise. That matters.
I normally do not have to give those details. I understand what you're saying here, and
Paul,
that's where.
let me just say, had we have had a conversation about this prior to this being in legislative form, I probably wouldn't be as adamant about asking all these questions and the what, wheres, and whys, because we would have a better understanding of it, okay? So I know you're irritated, and I apologize for that, but at the end of the day, we didn't talk about it. You guys may have been talking about it, but we, as a legislative body, haven't been talking about it, all right? So that's why we're asking these questions. If it was truly something that came up and we had, months and months and years of conversations, nobody would be surprised. That's all we're saying. So, again, it's not us versus you. I'm just trying to get questions answered. So, if you want to go ahead and, I think you have someone here.
With
President
School
Ewell, do you care if we,
I do not.
okay. So if you want to bring your representative to the podium, then we're,
If she's willing to come up here,
she's an attorney. She's not going to be afraid.
Melinda Shea, Shaw, Melinda Shaw, sorry. She's vice president of School D. Caldwell. She's an actual architect.
Oh.
University of Cincinnati graduate, by the way. She's proud of that.
Yeah.
And she's been with School D. Caldwell for, 13 years at least? 19.
It'll be 19 years next week, so.
And I assured her the conversation that was gonna happen tonight was not a reflection against her or Schooley Caldwell, because they are extremely qualified. They know what they're doing. This is not about piecemealing this building together. This is about doing it right. And I've always been of a philosophy, if we're gonna do it, let's do it right. But Melinda, if you could run a little bit with this, and after you've listened to a lot. This is our first time. We just met a little bit earlier, so thank you for being here tonight.
No problem. Thank you for having me. As you mentioned, I've been at Schooley Caldwell for 19 years. I've worked on 3 state capitals, a handful of courthouses around Ohio. Love to work on a city hall. I have worked on a town hall, lots of other public and private buildings. Over the years, we've developed a way of working with buildings like this one where you know you need to do something, you know you have some money, but you're not entirely sure how far that money is going to go or what exactly you need to do first and what your priorities are. And that's why we've been working closely with them to develop a strategy where we come in and we do a very in-depth study. This usually involves us getting up on lifts. This involves us making holes and knocking on things, sometimes taking out windows. So we get to know the building up close and personal. For a building this size, it probably does mean you'll have a lift down there with me and some of my colleagues dangling in a basket up close to your city hall, which I honestly, that's one of my fun days. And throughout that whole process, we're gathering information. We might have the building laser scanned, which helps us document even more things that you can't necessarily see with your eyes. And at the end of that gathering phase, we go back, we look at everything we've gotten, we have good drawings of the building by that point, we know where all the problem areas are, and we start looking and seeing what are the things that have to be addressed immediately. We already know there's some water infiltration issues. And the hard thing is with a building like that, once you start having water infiltration issues, the longer you wait, the more expensive they're gonna get to fix because they're only gonna keep getting worse. They're never gonna solve themselves. So start prioritizing those things. And we work with a lot of contractors that specialize in this type of work. And at the end of that first phase, we will come to you with a list of priorities and how much they cost. So you're not going to have to wait all the way till the end to know what it costs. I'm not saying that we won't encourage you to usually keep about a 15% contingency in a building like this, because ultimately, you know, I've worked on historic buildings for 19 years now. I know a lot of common problems. I know what to look for, but I don't have X-ray vision. You know, we'll open up a lot of things, but I can't open up everything, especially not in an occupied building, before we fully start construction. So we'll do all our background that we can. We'll tell you to hold a contingency, and we'll come up with a list of priorities that fit in your budget, and also a list of things such as at the Tuscarawas County Courthouse. They hired us to replace the copper roof on their dome. Got up there, it was in bad shape. It had been replaced in the 1980s by someone that really didn't know what they were doing. But when we were up there, we also noticed that the stone work on their dome also needed to be worked on. And they said, yes, we know that. We're planning on doing it in 2 years. And I was like, well, look, I understand that you need to phase things, but part of the problem with that building is getting to that stonework. They were going to spend about $250,000 just in scaffolding. It's like, hey, if you can, you know, that's the value of doing the actual work on the stone. If you can find that money now, we can save you $250,000 by understanding this building and understanding how to group things. So that's what we hope to do for you as well, is really looking at the building comprehensively, both outside, inside, looking at all the systems, letting you know what absolutely has to be handled now, what things could be pushed down the road, and make this into a building that functions as a modern office building. That's what our specialty is. I love doing it. If you're ever up in Delaware, Ohio, we recently restored their courthouse. So it's very much a 2021 functional office building that looks like it's inside an 1870s courthouse. They love it. If you stop in there, they will happily give you a tour probably for the next hour, whether you had that much time to spend or not. But we will make sure that we are working with you the whole time. Our contract, I have read the contract. It's a standard AIA contract with some extra provisions. I think this one's about 40 pages or so. It's not the 1,000 pages that you have for the water treatment plants. And absolutely, you can cancel at any time. Before we move on to the next phase, we have to get approval for the phase that we finished. That's normal for any architectural contract. I'm never paid until the work is each we're usually paid on a monthly basis, and for work that's already been completed. I'd never get paid in advance for anything. That'd be nice, but that's not how our profession works, so. So yeah, that 400,000 is over the course of the 2 to 3 years it takes to do the project, all the way through finishing construction.
Very good. Well, first, thank you for being here. We appreciate you coming up. Are you, yes, sir.
So Ms. Shaw supplied us with a letter with estimated billing for the first 5 months after the contract is in force. They estimate that the billing will be $130,000 for the next 5 months. After that, $100,000.
And what's that period?
For the second 5 months of 1, 2, 3, 4, actually the second 6 months. So the first 5 months, assuming that this gets passed fairly quickly and the contract gets executed, and she says it would be several weeks before that happens after it's passed. So if we get 5 months' work in this year at their estimated progress, it would be $130,000 of billing in 2022, and in the first 6 months of next year, $100,000.
Very good. Thank you for that. Again, thank you for being here. I'm going to open the floor to questions from council. Sure.
The clock, do you
Yes.
have contractors that are able to fix that the way it's built?
Definitely. Verdon, who is actually the one that's been maintaining your clock, and they maintain pretty much all the clocks in, historic clocks on courthouses in public buildings and around Ohio, are absolutely wonderful. They've already been calling me and emailing me as soon as they got word that we might be working on this project. So I've worked with them on other projects, and actually several courthouses have asked me, it's like, oh, well, who else is there? And it's like, well, that's one of the things that we're fortunate in Ohio, we have them. They actually travel to a lot of other states. There's not many other people that work on them, but they are wonderful. I would fully recommend them, so they know what they're doing.
Other questions? Well, I have a couple. The $4 million estimate that we see, is that something that came from you, or is that something that came from the administration? I mean, just
Us,
Yeah.
ballparking, or,
just to put a number out there.
okay.
Yeah.
Because we really don't know.
Okay.
I'm confident it's going to be.
Well, no, I know you did some work when
Yes.
Dave Smith was here. You worked with, gosh, I'm trying to remember the name of,
Dryden.
yeah,
There are
yes.
quite a few studies, and I commend that you've already done quite a bit of research and stuff on this building. None of it's been completed since 2018, so all of the numbers need to be updated and things,
Sure.
because construction costs, as we all know, have changed a lot in the last 4 years. so.
Well, that's the other thing, right?
The other reason not to wait, too. so.
Well, two. I want to ask you about Delaware County. So you just
Mm-hmm.
mentioned you did their courthouse, is that what you said?
Their historic courthouse, not their new courthouse.
Oh, they have an historic courthouse.
Yes.
That sounds familiar.
So they had, the commissioners used to be in the old Carnegie Library, which we had renovated for them, and then the courts decided they were moving into a new building across the street, and someone else did that one for them, and then we renovated the historic courthouse, and the county commissioners moved into that. So,
Okay. And then, how big of a project was that? And is there any chance you would know off the top of your head what the overrun was because of the unknowns? In a percentage, not dollars.
I'm not sure the percentage. It was a $10 million project, and I believe it came in very close to what we had predicted, so.
And that was done when?
It was finished, it was supposed to be finished right after the pandemic started. It took longer. It finished in January, right at the beginning of January 2021,
Okay.
so.
Other questions? Well, we do thank you for coming here, and we appreciate getting that information. That is helpful to know. And to hear from your side that, you know, if we call no joy at any point in time, then that's the way the deal is going to be written.
It's
in the
happened a
absence
lot.
of contract. Mayor, thank you for the expenditures for really the remainder of this year, which is, that's the big kind of question, right? It's a big number. Okay. Well, I don't have any other questions for you. Did you come from Cincinnati, or?
Columbus.
Oh, okay.
So it's about 40 minutes.
Oh, no, I know
Yeah.
where Columbus is.
Yeah.
I just wondered if you came all the way from Cincinnati.
No.
Okay. All right. Anyone else have any questions? All right, very good. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. All right. Any other comments specific to Resolution 9022? Yes, ma'am.
Just because I haven't said anything yet, really quick.
Sure.
When we campaigned for the levy, it was my understanding that we
the intent was to rehab the current city hall, and we campaigned as such. So I guess my feeling is I understand the fiscal responsibility of the city. I think this is the logical next step to be fiscally responsible and find out all the answers to our questions. And I haven't seen any evidence of anything untoward with the plan.
Well, no, I feel, to answer your question, I feel better having the conversation with Ms. Shaw coming down to really basically confirm that, you know, if it truly is a walkaway contract. You know, we've all heard the horror stories. How could you do that without knowing what seeing what you had? And the second part to that is there have been no conversations until this became in legislative form. So we needed to have these conversations along the way. So I don't disagree with you. I can tell you that I can get behind this at this point. I feel better about having the information that we actually have in hand. And, you know, knowing that every piece to move from this step to the next step is going to require council approval. And, you know, and to her word, she said they would have, you know, the timeline of repairs, prioritization. We know we're going to plan with a 15% contingency. And so we'll have a better understanding of whether that $4 million estimate is good or no good at the point. So,
We're all eager to know that, I'll tell you.
well, sure. And the other part of this, I've been around a long time, and a lot of talking about this, never formally, right? And this is where I kind of got sideways on this, is the fact that it just shows up in legislative form, and we're supposed to just, you know, rubber stamp that, and that's not what we should do. We should feel good about the vote we're going to take on 9022. So, all right. Any other items for finance? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make that motion.
Second?
And the second, Mr. McDaniel, or you want to keep going?
No, I second that motion.
Okay. We are adjourned.
It is 7:26. The regular meeting of Lancaster City Council will begin at approximately 7:30.
3 minutes to go to bed.
Dagger Law has been part of the Lancaster community for more than 110 years. This is where we live and work. You'll see us at festivals, sporting events, and all around town. We consider our clients as friends, and we walk alongside you through challenging times. Whether you're a growing business, a changing family, facing litigation, planning your future, or dealing with land issues, we're right here. We are local. We are trusted. We are experienced. Dagger Law.
The Frankie Smith Funeral Home and Crematory in Lancaster and the Johnson Smith Funeral Home in Baltimore have a long and wonderful history of serving our community. Feel free to give us a call at 740-653-0652. Stop in and see us at either of our two locations, 405 North Columbus Street in Lancaster and 207 South Main Street in Baltimore. Respect for tradition, regard for change.
Father, we thank you for this day, your many blessings, and how you continue to work in our lives. May you be with us tonight. We have already had important discussion. We pray you would guide us as we continue to have discussion and make decisions on behalf of those who have put us here. We ask these things in your Son's name. Amen. I hereby call this meeting of Lancaster City Council to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Here.
Mrs. Kreitz? Mr. James?
Here.
Mr. Matlin? Mr. McDaniel?
Here.
Mr. Schoonover?
Here.
Ms. Sitterly?
Here.
Mr. Stoughton? And Mrs. Teener?
Let the record reflect that all 9 members of Lancaster City Council are in attendance this evening, reading and disposing of the journal.
I'd like to present the regular meeting minutes dated June 27th, 2022.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the journal.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the journal. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Reports of city officials.
Email dated June 29th, 2022 regarding the July 18th City Council meeting submitted by President Uhl. Email dated July 1st, 2022 regarding Ohio Consumer Fireworks Law update submitted by Law Director Stephanie Hall. Email dated July 14th, 2022 regarding agenda for IT Telecom meeting submitted by Mrs. Teener. Email dated July 15th, 2022 regarding temporary resolution 90-22 submitted by Service Safety Director Paul Martin. Email dated July 18th, 2022 regarding the finance agenda submitted by Mr. Stoughton. And finally, an email dated July 18th, 2022 regarding indigent burial question submitted by Mr. Stoughton.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of city officials.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file reports of city officials. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Are there any communications?
There are 2. Email dated June 28, 2022 regarding the 2023 petition submitted by Leslie Morgan, Election Services from the Fairfield County Board of Elections. And secondly, a notice to the Legislative Authority of a transfer of a liquor license from NC Max, Inc., doing business as Lancaster Shell, located at 829 North High Street, Lancaster, Ohio, to RRAM Petroleum LLC, doing business as RRAM Petroleum, located at 829 North High Street, Lancaster, Ohio, submitted by the Ohio Division of Liquor Control.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the communications.
A motion and a second to receive and file communications. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We have no special presentations or awards tonight. Are there any petitions or memorials?
There are none to be presented.
During this time, Lancaster City Council sets time aside for the voters and taxpayers of the city to address us on any item or issue they would like. Is there anyone who would like to address Lancaster City Council this evening? All right, seeing none, we'll thank each of you for being here tonight. Reports of standing committees.
Law Committee meeting dated May 4th, 2022, submitted by Mrs. Kreitz. Economic Development meeting dated May 19th, 2022, submitted by Mr. McDaniel. Finance Committee meeting dated June 27th, 2022, submitted by Mr. McDaniel. And the Water Pollution Control meeting dated July 13th, 2022, submitted by Mr. James.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of standing committees.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file reports of standing committees. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Are there reports of special committees?
There are none to be presented.
We have no public hearings this evening. We'll move to the reading of resolutions, beginning with the second reading of temporary resolution 90-22.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a contract with Schooley Caldwell as the city's design professional for the rehabilitation of the City Hall and to appropriate from the unencumbered balance in the Capital Improvement Fund 3020 and amend the certificate with the County Auditor, offered by Mr. McDaniel and seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion, council suspend its rules and waive the third reading of resolution temporarily numbered 90-22.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the third reading of temporary resolution 90-22. Discussion, Mr. McDaniel.
I will save it.
Discussion on the motion to suspend. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Sitterly?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 9-0. Mr. McDaniel.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 90-22.
We have a motion to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record, temporary resolution 90-22. Discussion, Mr. McDaniel.
I really can't add much to our discussion. I will say personally that questions and concerns I had were appropriately addressed, and I feel confident and support the passage of this legislation.
Thank you, Mr. McDaniel. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Mr. Stoughton.
Since I was the instigator of all that discussion, I'm going to offer a little bit here. So, we got surprised by a big expenditure, and we had a good discussion about that expenditure. You know, it's not a personal, there was nothing personal about this. It was about the fact that this landed on our desk, you know, really the Friday before, it was to be read the first time. The other part to this is, as we go forward and get to the next phase, right? Let's make sure that we're having a conversation well before the time that there needs to be appropriations considered for whatever comes from, you know, the first couple phases. I think it was good at the end where we had Ms. Shaw here. She added a lot of value to the discussion, and, you know, I can now get behind this and support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stoughton. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Ms. Craig.
I would also just say that the figures and the timeline that Mayor Scheffler provided really helped me understand better as well. So thank you for that as well.
Further discussion. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Sitterly?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
No.
Temporary resolution 90-22 passes 8-1. We now have first reading on a series of resolutions, beginning with temporary resolution 94-22.
A resolution to amend the certificate of appropriation with the county auditor and appropriate from the unencumbered balance in the general fund 1001, offered by Mr. Stoughton and seconded by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. This will be the first of 3 readings on this piece, please.
First of 3 readings on temporary resolution 94-22. Temporary resolution 95-22.
A resolution to amend the certificate of appropriation with the county auditor and appropriate from the unencumbered balance in the general fund 1001, offered by Mr. Stoughton, seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third reading of resolution temporary 9622, please. I'm sorry, 9522, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 95-22. Discussion, Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. Clerk Valita Sloan was here, and she's just a little off on her budget, and when I say a little, it's $17.28. So we're going to appropriate to make her budget whole for the remainder of the year in this particular overtime line item. So we're asking for suspension to get that account whole, please.
Further discussion on the motion to suspend. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Sitterly?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 9-0. Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to make a motion that council pass and gross and enter upon the written record resolution temporary 9522, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass and gross and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 95-22. Discussion, Mr. Stoughton.
Nothing further, please.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Sitterly?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 95-22 passes 9-0. Temporary resolution 96-22.
A resolution to increase receipts appropriate from the unencumbered balance and amend the certificate of other sources and appropriations with the county auditor and the Muni Court Judicial Drug Court Adam H. Fund 2039, offered by Mr. Stoughton and seconded by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third reading of resolution temporary 9622, please.
Second.
A motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 96-22. Discussion, Mr. Stoughton.
I'll wait.
Discussion on the motion to suspend. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Sitterly?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 9-0. Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that council pass and gross and enter upon the written record Resolution Temporary 9622, please.
Second.
Se-
Oh,
Second.
so sorry.
You're all right.
Mr. McDaniel.
You want in?
So, we have a motion and a couple of seconds to pass and gross and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 96-22. Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. This resolution is basically appropriating money from the municipal courts, Municipal Court, Judicial Drug Court, Adam H. Fund 2039 to effectively, and this is basically reimbursement money that they've received from grant programs. So they want to appropriate this $130,000 to pay for contract services and drug and alcohol testing supplies for their Fresh Start Drug Court. We actually had Judge Fields here today, who I thought gave a really compelling reason that these drug courts work and working very, very well in Fairfield County. So I think it's a good use of the money.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Stoughton. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Sitterly?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Temporary resolution 96-22 passes 9-0. Temporary resolution 97-22.
A resolution to pay, or excuse me, a resolution to authorize the issuance of a then and now certificate to pay an invoice to Widen Services, Inc., offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mr. Matlin.
Mr. James.
Yes, thank you, President Old. At this time, I would like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 9722.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 97-22. Discussion, Mr. James.
Nothing at this time.
Discussion on the motion to suspend. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Sitterly?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 9-0. Mr. James.
Thank you, President Noel. At this time, I would like to make a motion that council pass and gross and enter upon our written record temporary resolution 9722.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, gross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 97-22. Discussion, Mr. James.
Just briefly, and I know we discussed some of this in the Finance Committee meeting, this almost $4,900 was for some training that had to be done on the bucket truck. That was done back in March and had to be done to bring everybody up to date.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. James. Further discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Sitterly?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Temporary resolution 97-22 passes 9-0. Temporary resolution 98-22.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a contract for the construction of the North Water Treatment Plant Replacement Project, offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mrs. Teener.
Mr. James.
Thank you, President Noel. This is the first of two readings.
First of two readings on temporary resolution 98-22. Are there any further resolutions to come before Lancaster City Council this evening? If not, we'll move to the reading of ordinances, beginning with the first reading of temporary ordinance 21-22.
An ordinance to repeal and replace Lancaster Codified Ordinance Part 3 Traffic Code, Title 7 Parking, Chapter 351 Parking Generally, Section 351.15 Parking during snow removal or street cleaning, and Part 3 Traffic Code, Title 1 Administration, Chapter 303 Enforcement, Impounding and Penalty, Section 303.08 Impounding of Vehicles, redemption of the codified ordinances of the City of Lancaster, offered by Mrs. Kreitz and seconded by Mr. Schoonover.
Mrs. Kreitz.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. As mentioned during the Finance Committee meeting, this is to repeal and replace sections of the Traffic and Parking Code to allow the Service Safety Director to prohibit parking in locations when projects such as street paving are underway, and then to also change the requirement from for impoundment of vehicles, making it mandatory to permissible. This is the first of two readings.
Thank you very much. First of two readings then on temporary ordinance 21-22. Temporary ordinance 22-22.
An ordinance to grant an easement to Summit IG LLC for the installation and maintenance of a fiber optic telecommunications system over and through 0.554 plus minus acres of the City of Lancaster property. Offered by Mr. Schoonover and seconded by Mr. James.
Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third readings of temporary ordinance 2222.
And I will second that.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary ordinance 22-22. Discussion, Mr. Schoonover.
Just briefly, we're not asking for suspension. This is granting an easement through the city's property as part of our continued economic development projects and growth out on Wilson Road. So they have a hard deadline, and that is why we're asking for suspension.
Thank you very much. Further discussion on the motion to suspend. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Sitterly?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Motion to suspend carries 9-0. Mr. Schoonover.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass and gross and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 2222.
I will second that.
A motion and a second to pass and gross and enter upon the written record temporary ordinance 22-22. Discussion, Mr. Schoonover.
No, thank you.
Discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mr. Ayers?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Sitterly?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener?
Yes.
Temporary ordinance 22-22 passes 9-0. Temporary ordinance 23-22.
An ordinance to amend the City of Lancaster zoning map to change the zoning of 4.083 plus minus acres identified as Fairfield County Auditor Tax Parcel Number 0535027600 from industrial heavy to commercial general and to declare an emergency. Offered by Mr. Ayers and seconded by Ms. Sitterly.
Mr. Ayers.
This is simply just to rezone for a Dollar General to be built in this land as long as they meet certain conditions. This will be the first of two readings with the public hearing on August 8th at 6:30.
Thank you, Mr. Ayers. First of two readings on temporary ordinance 23-22. And again, we know a public hearing scheduled at our next meeting, August 8th, here in council chambers at 6:30. There's no tabled legislation this evening, and there are other ordinances to come before Lancaster City Council. If not, we'll move to unfinished business. Does anyone have unfinished business this evening? Does anyone have new business this evening? If not, I'll just mention briefly, of course, you know we have one meeting in July for a specific reason, and that is because the Lancaster Festival and all the activities that it brings to our community. I know that many of you are active and engaged and involved in those festival activities. You saw the announcement today of the cancellation of the main act and the replacement of that act with Billy Currington on the last Saturday, which I'm particularly excited about because I looked up his songs and I knew more of them than I knew of Lady A. And so we are excited about the festival. There's something for everyone. For the rockers like Miss Teener, there's Rick Springfield, so you can come out.
I know Dr. Noah Drake is how I remember him. General
Yeah, that's right. Well, you can come and see him live and in
He was
person.
an actor?
He was in General Hospital.
Oh, yeah, he was. It was Dr. Noah Drake.
Great day in the morning. Talk to Susan. She'll tell you.
And, oh, I do have an announcement. I will be driving the Kiwanis little train, and I think Mr. James is gonna be the conductor, and I'll be driving. So if anybody wants to come out for that fun time.
That'll be Festival Fair Day, I'm sure, on Saturday is what you're talking about, right? So there is something for everyone is the point. I hope you'll go out, support the Lancaster Festival and the many activities and events that they have. Is there other new business this evening before Lancaster City Council? If not, we'll ask the clerk to read our announcement of scheduled meetings.
Upcoming meetings, August 8th at 6:30 PM. At that meeting, we will have a public hearing on temporary ordinance 2322. The meeting following is August 22nd at 6:30 PM here in council chambers. Upcoming committee meetings for the next 30 days. Law, August 3rd at 11:30 AM at the 1897 conference room. Code Enforcement, August 8th at 7:30 AM at the 1897 conference room. Finance, August 8th at 6 PM at the here in council chambers. Water Pollution, August 10th at 8:30 AM at the 1897 conference room. Public Works, August 12th at 7:30 AM at the 1897 conference room. And finally, Economic Development, August 18th at 7:30 a.m. at the 1897 conference room.
Thank you very much. Are there any bills?
There are two. The first bill is for publication of the notice of the public hearing that we just read this evening to PNC, payable to PNC for our publication in the MNCO paper, $132.10. The second bill is payable to PNC for ordinance and minutes books to Proforma in the amount of $613.06.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to pay the bills.
Second.
Motion is second to pay the bills. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I know of no need for an executive session this evening. If that is the case, a motion to adjourn is in order.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion we adjourn.
A motion is second to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Meeting's adjourned. Please remember to sign your legislation. Enjoy the festival.